Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. If you're a GCSE Edexcel Psychology student currently diving into the criminal psychology topic, you are exactly where you need to be. Today, we're putting on our detective hats to investigate one of the absolute core studies on your syllabus, Charlton et al., from the year 2000. So, grab your revision notes because we are going to unpack the whole shebang regarding television and playground behavior.
Does violent TV actually create violent kids? It's the million-dollar question, right? I mean, it's totally a common assumption. You think, okay, if kids sit in front of a screen watching explosions, fighting, and aggressive characters, they're obviously going to go out into the real world and copy that exact same behavior. It sounds like pure common sense. But, well, as we know in psychology, common sense doesn't always line up with the actual data. And that is the core mystery we're tackling today. Are criminal and aggressive behaviors actually learned from the media we consume? Let's find out.
Here's our quick revision roadmap for today. We'll be hitting the background and study aim, the St. Helena sample, how they measured playground behavior, the results and conclusions, and finally, we'll evaluate the study.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Background and Study Aim.
So picture this, a tiny, super remote British colony located deep in the South Atlantic Ocean called the island of St. Helena. Get this, prior to 1994, the people living there didn't have any broadcast television whatsoever. None. So when satellite TV was finally being introduced to the island, researchers realized they had literally a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to conduct a natural experiment. Now remember, this is an absolutely crucial exam term. The researchers didn't force the islanders to get TV, and they definitely didn't manipulate the independent variable. The introduction of TV was totally naturally occurring. They just took advantage of this unique setup to study the islanders right there in their natural environment.
So, what exactly were they looking for? Well, Charlton and his team wanted to investigate the effect of the introduction of satellite TV on the aggressive behavior of children. But here's the catch. Because this was such an unprecedented event, they honestly had no idea what was going to happen. Because of that uncertainty, they had to start with a non-directional hypothesis. They figured there would be some kind of change, sure, but they didn't specify whether aggression would go up or down.
Moving right along to Section 2, the St. Helena sample.
You know that in any psychological study, nailing down the sample is key, and this one is just incredibly unique. The magic number you're going to want to remember for your exam is 160. That was the approximate number of kids making up the random sample here. They were drawn from 2 different primary schools on the island, all between the ages of 3 and 8 years old. But the absolute most important thing about these 160 kids, they had literally never seen broadcast television before in their entire lives. Basically, a complete blank slate when it came to TV exposure.
Okay, Section 3, Measuring Playground Behavior. So, how did our psychological detectives actually gather their evidence? Let's check out the timeline. 4 months before the TV signal was turned on in 1994, the researchers secretly set up video cameras in the school playgrounds. They basically just waited until the kids got bored of the cameras and stopped paying attention to them so everyone would go back to their normal daily routines. During morning, lunch, and afternoon free play over a 2-week period, they captured 256 minutes of pre-TV footage. Then, fast forward through 5 years of broadcast TV to the year 2000, and they repeated that exact same process, recording another 344 minutes of post-TV footage.
Now, you obviously can't just sit there watching hours of video and just kind of guess if kids are being aggressive, right? You need a totally standardized measure. So the researchers used something called the PBOS, which stands for the Playground Behaviors Observation Scale. Definitely memorize that acronym. The full scale usually tracks 26 different behaviors, but Charlton's team zoomed in on 8 specific pro-social and antisocial behaviors to tally up. They tracked these behaviors in 30-minute time chunks so they could accurately compare the pre-television and post-television eras.
To make absolutely sure their data was rock solid, they had to establish really high intercoder reliability. Basically, that just means making sure different researchers actually agree on what they're looking at. So they had independent coders work in pairs, meticulously tracking behaviors for every single 60-second interval of the video. After that, the coders would get together, compare notes, and discuss what they saw. If there was even a little disagreement, like was that child just playing around or being genuinely aggressive, they would rewind and replay the tape up to 7 times until they reached a 100% agreement. That process made their data incredibly accurate.
Let's look at the results. Section 4, Results and Conclusions. All right, the methodology is locked in, the data is tallied up. So, what actually happened to the playground behavior of these kids once TV arrived? Well, take a look at this data. The researchers made 64 total comparisons of behavior before and after TV was introduced. And out of those 64, only 9 showed a statistically significant change. Honestly, that means the vast majority of behaviors didn't significantly change at all. And what's really interesting here is that out of those 9 changes, 5 were actually an increase in positive pro-social behavior for both boys and girls.
Let's break down these pretty unexpected findings a bit more. First off, antisocial behavior started very low on the island, and it just stayed low. In fact, pro-social behavior was almost twice as high as antisocial behavior, both before and after TV showed up. But here is the most surprising part. The exact behaviors we usually associate with violent TV, like hitting and pushing, actually decreased among boys. Now, it's true that boys did show a decrease in their willingness to help or show affection, and overall, yeah, they showed more antisocial behavior than girls. But that massive dramatic spike in violent playground brawls that society totally expected, it just didn't happen.
So the main takeaway is captured absolutely perfectly in this conclusion from Charlton. He explicitly stated, exposure to more violent TV does not necessarily result in an increase in aggressive behavior. Grab a pen because that is a fantastic exam-ready quote for you to jot down. The data simply did not back up the idea that watching television directly turns kids into criminals or violent playground bullies. The hitting, the kicking, the pushing, they just didn't see an increase.
Almost at the finish line. Section 5, Evaluating the Study.
Now, as good psychologists, we know we can't just take a study at face value, right? We have to critically evaluate it. And for that, we're going to use our trusty GRAVE mnemonic. Let's start with G for generalizability. Honestly, this is a pretty major weakness for this study. St. Helena is a super tiny, incredibly tight-knit community. Everyone knows everyone. That kind of high-level supervision and community spirit might not really represent the typical mainland cultures in the UK or the US. Plus, a content analysis actually showed that the TV broadcasts on the island didn't entirely mirror mainland TV. It just had less violence overall. For example, the hugely popular action-packed show Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles wasn't even broadcast there. So we really have to ask ourselves, can we generalize these findings to kids living in massive cities like London or New York, who are watching completely different shows? Probably not.
Moving right along to the R, reliability. And this perfectly illustrates exactly why we always need to look at multiple studies. You see, Charlton's findings aren't perfectly reliable because they don't totally line up with other research out there. For instance, another research team conducted a very similar natural experiment observing 3 different communities in Canada. But in that study, they found that the introduction of TV actually did increase aggression in children. When you have major studies getting completely conflicting results like this, it definitely lowers the overall reliability of the conclusion.
Okay, let's rapid fire through the A, V, and E to round out your grave revision notes, because these are actually strong points for the study. For application, the findings are super useful for parents and educators who are trying to make informed decisions about managing screen time. For validity, the study boasts incredibly high ecological validity. Remember, the kids weren't stuck in some weird artificial lab. They were observed just playing in their own natural primary school playgrounds. And finally, for ethics, this study is basically the gold standard. There were virtually 0 ethical issues because it was a naturally happening situation. The researchers didn't manipulate a single thing or expose the kids to anything harmful themselves.
So we've clearly seen that the link between media and criminal or aggressive psychology is nowhere near as simple as monkey see, monkey do. It's way more complex. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought as you carry on with your revision. If violent TV doesn't automatically cause aggressive behavior, what hidden environmental factors are actually shaping our actions? Is it our parents, our peers, the structure of our community? It's like a giant puzzle. Keep asking those critical questions as you prep for your exams. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy studying.